Oh, yeah. Right, that's why I couldn't find it. So, like the short-term memory problems here. So my, yeah. I guess it was the edit, or was the settings? Were you looking at settings, weren't we?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so if we go and find this label suggestion type, and we try to match that up to the, we'll find it here somewhere, label suggestion types, there it is. All right, so here's that key with a .text after it. So the naming convention is, it's .text, or you'll see that there's several others like .help. All right, so you want to go and read the localization documentation. I covered a bit in the book too, what this naming convention is for these keys. So basically in here then you put the string that you want to be displayed at the time that the object is rendered on the page. Now if we actually go back and look at the controller, you'll see that I actually put some text in here. The actual text is here. All right, but that really just becomes the default if there's nothing in the resource file. If there's no key in the resource file, then this text gets displayed. If there's a key in the resource file that matches it, the resource file key gets loaded. All right, but you actually have to make the call in your code to do the loading. All right, so that's really what I wanted to show you here, is that this idea of resource keys and the idea that each item is going to have a class definition. All right. So this class definition will correspond back to a CSS file. Right, so you actually will want to style each of your items. All right, so in the case of subhead, these are actually like the labels, for the fields that are listed down in one column. They're sort of bold-faced types. That's why they're called subheads. So you can go and change the subhead definition and change the way that all of that whole column of controls looks. All right, you can do that in your module, or you can do it portal-wide. All right, there's a module.css file, and there's also a portal.css file, so you can do that in either place, depending on the extent to which you want to change the style. All right, so it lets a designer or a site administrator who's a designer actually style up your module very nicely. And if you hard code all this stuff, you don't provide these style definitions, they don't have any control over the way your text looks, or your styling looks. So you have to think about this if you want to build a really nice professional module.
You're using table-based layout here. Can you use CSS also?
Yeah. So Ryan Morgan talks about pure CSS styling. So the South Florida Code Camp and the Orlando Code Camp is coming up in March. We're going to do that whole track of .NET sessions, and Ryan talks about it. He's going to talk about it at both of those code camps. So if you want to go and see how to do that, you can do it. So yeah, this is the old traditional table style. So you certainly can use the pure CSS style. So let's look at that code behind there for this settings. And basically, what you're going to find then is that here's all the controls on the form. These are not strings that are displayed, but rather these are actually custom resource keys. All right, that I pull out. I have my own name for these things, so I hard coded those keys in here. Yeah, that's just, sorry, we don't want to look at that part. The base method implementations, so you have like a load settings method. So you can store things away in settings in .NETNuke. There's a whole settings provider, in there. So you can load and update settings, and I'm actually storing several things in the settings here. Here we're doing a calling tab module settings for that particular settings string, to pull it out. This is how I load what it takes to enter a suggestion and the thank you message that comes back. Then there's the actual events that so we have like an add click event, so that again the type controller gets called. So what we're doing here is adding we're adding a suggestion. Oh yeah, a suggestion type. So that was the little thing that I did at the top where I filled out, click add, click all the time. Just what it's doing here is getting that suggestion type info object, filling the fields, and then and then calling the suggestions.add suggestion type method, which actually runs down through the data layer and sticks it in the database. So ultimately, this is where, I mean, this is really the extent of what you'll find, you know, the code behind these pages often look like. It's basically just pulling fields off the form, stuffing them into the database, or taking a database record and displaying it on the form. And
we're going to need to.
what I actually want to do is show the.
Stan?
Yes.
We're going to need to start wrapping it up.
Okay. I just want to show that. All right. Let me not show it then. I do want to show this because it's the one piece that talks about permissions. So that, remember I talked about the display module will display only the suggestions on the page for page admin, and it'll display all the suggestions on the portal for the portal admin. So that's done here in this call. So this is the page load for the display suggestions, and what it does is it says, it calls .NetNuke.security.portalsecurity.isInRoles, and it asks for the administrator. All right, it says, is this user the administrator? If they are, then we call the getSuggestionModules all tabs method. All right, so it just goes and pulls all the suggestions on the whole site. Otherwise, it just calls getSuggestionsModules this tab, so it only shows a list of the ones that are on this page. All right, so this is kind of how you use roles to define, and security lookups to define how functionality changes by user depending on the role. All right, so this is a very, very simple example of that, but I think it serves to illustrate, you know, the kind of things that you can do. And here you're doing this localization.localized data grid. Right, this happens to be the place that we're displaying that data grid. So it's in fact possible to localize and to style the entire data grid. You know, the column headers can be styled, the text in the columns, the way that the backgrounds look, and everything can be done through this localized data grid method. All right, so they provided. This is what I mean when I say they provided a huge amount of plumbing, you know, in the .NetNuke core code that you should take advantage of. All right, so that's about the extent of what you'll find in the code. I think I touched on all the main pieces here. Let's go back to the slides and just wrap it up. So, okay, so this page talks about how you create a project from scratch, which we're not going to do today. These are all the steps required. In the book, I go through this in detail. All right, so I actually go through every step in this process and show you all the grim details that are required. All right, so this now is the slide that sort of touches on a lot of the things, presumably, that Darryl will talk about next month. So when you start dealing with module development, I've really touched on data layer, business objects, user controls, styling, localization. That's about it. All right. There's lots of namespaces inside of .NetNuke. Lots of CAN functionality in there. Object browser is your friend here. Go and take a look through it. You know, there's documents that talk about it. The book goes into lots of these things in a lot more detail. There's portal data structures and methods. There's user data structures. There's module data structures. There's all kinds of things. Page navigation stuff we talked about. Users, roles, and security. You kind of get into, depending on how complicated your module functionality is. This, you can go as deep as you want with that stuff. We talked about the reusable core controls. There's a whole bunch of them. Be familiar with what's in there. Localization. So then there's a whole client API or AJAX API. You can also use jQuery now. If you're familiar with jQuery, it's a client-side scripting environment that's really powerful, very, very cool. Whole exceptions and logging mechanism built into .NetNuke. And you can even have your modules communicate with each other through an intercommunication module mechanism. So there's lots and lots of depth, lots of things to go and explore, lots of things to learn when you actually get into the depths of module development. So this is basically just wrapping up. You attach to the process the web process. You set a breakpoint in your page load, off you go. There's an exception log under the admin event viewer. So if your modules, you want to make sure your module's not generating exceptions, but if it does, it shows up in this log. And then this last one is really just for your help, for your benefit. If you're looking at the .NET source code,
This is sort of the code, the way that the code flows.